welcome back to The Journey. Today, we're happy to have Gwen Lilly with us. So thank you, Gwen, for coming. And I just have to say, I've been in the catechism class with you, when it was aired or when we had it. And I'm just curious, since that class, how have you processed learning more about the catechism? How has that affected your journey? Is that a fair question? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting, and it's actually kind of relevant because, I'm also now continuing. Kim Fleming has the art accompaniment classes, so when you go to the catechism, you sort of learn formation. You kind of solidify your faith. Okay, I have a reference. I think a lot of people feel like they don't really know their faith. They don't want to share it because they think we had it wrong. So in the catechism class, I felt like we learned some of the basics. We had references. We wrestled with questions. We learned things. And now I'm finding opportunities to sort of share what I learned, go back when it's relevant, to share with somebody else. Somebody at work is wrestling. I work for National Defense. There's an employee that's wrestling with, am I stealing by getting intelligence? Am I killing because I'm helping National Defense and able to reference things that we learned in the catechism to kind of set that straight, and in other situations. So I find that very interesting that there can be immediate relevance to the things and trying to out of situations.
I'd love to hear your answer to those. We won't go into that today.
So I'm searching some of them and putting together my proposals.
Wow. Well, were there some other specific things that affected you personally? Do you remember as we went through the catechism? I mean, I'm assuming that you're a cradle Catholic.
Yeah.
And so I was the one that I felt going into a catechism class was the only one that didn't know a lot of stuff. But I was surprised to find I wasn't the only one. And I thought, well, as a cradle Catholic, how is that for you, or was that for you to be learning some of these things?
Yeah, I think there was still a lot of opportunity for learning. And what I find a lot of times with cradle Catholics is that we pick up phraseology, or we think we know things because a relative always did things a certain way. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday about getting sort of clarity of language and how you sometimes have to explain to somebody what Catholics really believe. For example, we'll often say things like, I'm praying to such and such a saint about something, but we really don't pray to the saints. We ask them to pray for us.
That was a big learning thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you get used to certain language, you do forget like what the real beliefs are until somebody challenges you and they go, I think to pray to the saints. Like, no, we don't really pray to the saints. And, so I feel like there were just as many things for me to learn, even though I am a cradle Catholic and grew up thinking I understood everything. Another danger, you think you understand things, and then you get that, somebody asks you the question and you're like, well, I'm not really sure why that is, or I don't know what to tell you the answer is, and you want to go back and find out specifically.
So we all have assumptions that we understand things and maybe have a good reason until somebody asks for the reason, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know what the reason is. Well, since you grew up Catholic, do you feel like there was a time when going to church and all, you owned it for yourself? Or do you feel like that came later in life, early in life?
I went through various phases. I remember when I was probably in middle school or just at high school or something like that. Over the summer, I would ride my bike every day to Mass. And it was like 3 miles away or something. We'd go big and everything, but I just felt compelled to go to Mass in this tiny church, and I'd sit with the nuns in the next pew, and that really was what I needed at the time. And yet, when I went off to college, and I started questioning things and judging like the particular priests and what they, there was like a disconnect for me. Well, they're preaching about this, and that's not what I think we stand for. And so I pushed back on it and left the church for a little bit. and had to kind of come back after I sorted out, my own sort of misunderstandings, or was able to separate, just because a particular priest might say something that does not represent the entire church. You have to know what your faith is and let that be, what you are part of, and maybe help others that are lacking certain understanding or formation or something. But now I still feel like I'm really on a journey to keep learning and just keep understanding. I'm a very analytical person, and so things sometimes need to make sense to me. And I feel like, the Catholic faith is the truth. It can withstand all of the interrogation I give it, or, how we want to phrase that. But I do question things to make sure, like, this is making sense. So if somebody else has that question, I can resolve it. To an understanding, it's got to come back to something truth. So I'm still on a journey.
Well, I think we all are, and that's a good way that you just described that. That, how did you say it? That the Catholic faith can withstand the interrogation I give it?
Right. So, a lot of people will have an argument about something, and I feel like they're kind of ready to dismiss everything. You're like, oh, well, then the Catholic faith is wrong. But maybe it's just your interpretation or your understanding, or, you need to sort it out, because, kind of like science, like, you can test things in science and either your hypothesis was wrong or that's got to be true. And I feel like that's the Catholic faith. That is the truth. So what is it that I'm misunderstanding or not framing correctly? It's got to have some integrity overall that it all works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. I remember years ago, before I became Catholic, somebody asked me, and I think they were Catholic and I was not. They seemed totally shocked that I was talking about doubts or questions. And it was as if I rocked his world by saying, it really is okay to ask questions. In fact, it's a great idea. He was so taken by that. I don't know how or where he grew up as a Catholic, but this was a man probably, in his mid-30s, maybe 40s even. He was so taken by that years later, he put a line of dedication in his PhD to me for saying that, that it's okay to ask questions and not. That's a serious thing for a lot of people, and that they are afraid. I don't know what the fear is. Afraid to doubt, afraid to ask questions.
Kind of see it. If you think of a relationship that you have with another person, if you challenge them on something, oftentimes their reaction would be, well, don't you trust me? And it can damage the relationship. Maybe there's a fear of, they'll be mad at me if I show that doubt or something. I don't want to cross God, suggest that I don't believe what he told me, but maybe they see that as reflecting badly on them or something.
Yeah. Well, we should all just tell everyone out there, God won't be mad at you if you ask questions. In fact, he invites them. So you can quote one by saying, God can stand up to any interrogation that you give him.
Yeah, because in the end, you understand it more fully, I think, because it's not a shortcoming of God, it's a shortcoming that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the learning takes place, in my opinion.
And we're all learners. that's for sure. You're saying that as a cradle Catholic, that you're on a journey to continue learning. I feel that very much. Well, how different do you see things in your Catholic training, say, of your kids and in this, current day, compared to when you were younger and what you were taught? Is there a big difference?
Yeah, I did not feel like I had all the nuts and bolts. The time, I think a lot of people understand this, that there's been pendulum shifts. And, I grew up in the 70s, and a lot of my, religious ed, CCD, whatever, was just a constant reminder that God loves you, and not necessarily understanding all of the specifics of Catholic identity. And I think that was important, because I think you have to have a relationship with God. And I think that's where if it's swinging too far, like don't get all caught up in knowing by rote all of the things that you're supposed to memorize. Like, it's not just about the facts of the Catholicism. You have to have a relationship with God. But I think because there's a reason behind all of the things that are important to your Catholic identity. They say those are the foundation. Those help guide you a lot of times by still be in that relationship. It's sort of like building a relationship without knowing anything about somebody. It adds to it. It enhances your friendship if the more you know about that person and what's important to them and the values and everything else.
So that's what you're describing as a Catholic identity.
Yes, yeah, all the things to know that the importance of the Eucharist, it's the real presence, and everything, like 7 sacraments and Jesus' last words and the apostles' names and all the things. Sure.
Well, I was asking you that partly because I don't hear that term spoken of that much, our Catholic identity.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important thing. I mean, it's something that, as you're bringing up, I'm realizing I'm gonna think more about. What is my Catholic identity? I haven't been that long in faith. So,
actually, I think somebody that comes from a Protestant background is often more able to identify what is particular about Catholicism. And where it sort of became clear to me was in helping the confirmation classes. There was a period where part of confirmation formation was to go to a different house of worship and or just understand, like, what do they believe? What do you I have no contrast, because when you kind of grow up in something, you don't know that it's part of who you are as an identity. Like, well, doesn't everybody do that? Right on your national heritage, the Italian, the Polish or something, like, oh, that's a Polish thing. I thought everybody kind of did that.
Right.
So when you grow up Catholic and we just do things, you just know then it's a Catholic thing necessarily. So, so kind of seeing that contrast and realizing, like, this is important, our the way we venerate Mary is like a very Catholic thing. And other faiths didn't think that. That's for sure.
So you're saying that you helped with confirmation classes.
Mm-hmm.
And did the classes go to attend another worship ceremony?
We did. Like, I led a confirmation group, and we went and attended service at, I don't even remember which church it was, just down the road here on Liberty Road. And, they were very welcoming, and we had to sort of explain to the kids what to participate in and what not to participate in. And, but just for them to see, like, this is what's different about their worship service as opposed to the Mass. And then in conjunction with that, teach them all the parts of the Mass, kind of like what Father John is doing right now, helping us understand well.
Well, I'm curious, do all confirmation classes do that?
That was the program at the time. Depending like who is in charge of religious ed and formation in the church. So I think it's evolved. I don't know that they'd still do something like that.
Yeah. Well, I've always felt intrigued by a Jewish service. I guess sorry, I don't even remember. I'm going to synagogue,
right?
And I've gone and been with them there, and I'm always fascinated by that. And so I do think that's important.
Yeah.
So not so much for shopping. I mean, we're not shopping around, but we're understanding, like you said, understanding the whole world is not just like me.
Yeah.
The whole world doesn't do exactly what I do.
And I mean, when it comes to the Jewish faith, like, that's our
story, surrounding roots.
Yeah, and a lot of the Bible talks about Jewish customs and things, so that's kind of interesting. And some of the other Protestant faiths, they came off of the church, so you still will see references back to the Catholic Mass, and I think it gives you an opportunity to identify, what do we still share in common? Where can we have a conversation? Ultimately want to bring everybody back into one common.
Yeah, we have a long way to go, but I think the more we learn and do what you're suggesting, it's going to be all for the better. So as you think about things you're learning and want to learn, are there any things that you sort of focused on in terms of what's next that you want to learn?
Yeah, so it's really coming off of the Lent mission that we had for this year, and it was moving into better prayer life. That's always been a bit of a struggle for me, figuring out how to do that successfully. So
that was the full part prayer that he talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's intriguing to you about that?
Well, I kind of like the idea of creating the sacred space, creating the sacred time. Oftentimes somebody will give you advice and make it sound so easy, oh, just do this.
Yeah.
Okay, that works for you, but I'm not sure that's going to work for me. But I felt like we got advice about how to set yourself up for success with, carve out the location where you're going to be able to remove distractions and identify a time, set that time, and work around it. And, and then some techniques and things to read the scripture and reflect on it or something. But, and an accountability partner or something. A lot of times you can achieve something if you just don't give up. And so I felt like some of the advice that he gave in regard of starting a good habit sets you up for just continuing, and eventually you will succeed because you don't give up.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting, the word habit you just said. I think people probably have mixed reactions to the word habit, right? I mean, when you just said it, I thought, wow, I wonder if some of us feel like prayer shouldn't be in the form of a habit. Because so many people think of habits as bad, as opposed to something wonderful that you look forward to, but it really does need to be something you repeat, which is really what habits all about, right?
Right.
Getting into a regular, I guess the other word might be discipline.
Sure. Yeah.
Doing it. I know that I tend to avoid a lot of routine. I like going with the flow and variety, and so sometimes that's hard. But I think his point was, if you do that, help me remember what he said. If you do that, you may never get to it. You may never get it done, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So the plus side of a discipline of praying is that you will actually do that and enjoy the relationship.
It's like that with so many things that are good for us, eating a good diet, taking care of your body,
exercise,
hygiene, things, right? So, we take the path of least resistance, where we get tired. We don't do what's good for us a lot of times. But we always feel better to do.
We humans have this thing. We don't want to just do what we're supposed to, right?
Yeah. You want a break, I'll just skip it this time. But if it gets harder, I'm not going to do it. Yeah, kind of thing. And it makes you stronger. All these things that are difficult just make you stronger.
Well, back to knowing or having a relationship, I was impressed with what you said about your early training, that it focused on having a relationship with God. Because the thing that I heard as a Protestant was that Catholics didn't emphasize relationship. That in fact it was the opposite of what you said. So I don't know if it's a time period when things changed, but you say it was a real emphasis.
I I think that was probably my takeaway from it, or maybe it's me looking in hindsight at it, because I do think that there's a lot of the trappings of, when you get so distracted about a lot of things that you're supposed to do, or people look around and, we can have challenges with feeling better about ourselves by pointing out how somebody else is maybe not doing as well.
Rules and the regulations.
Mass, like, oh, well, look how they were dressed at mass, and at least I go all the time, or we want to do something that makes us feel better, and that can be very distracting. Certainly, not the important thing. So I see it as the emphasis, because it was so much, God loves you, Jesus loves you. That was the emphasis, and to me, that's got to be about relationship. If you're pointing out to me that no matter what, He loves me, then I can get past all the, like, am I doing everything exactly correctly? Trying, but it's not gonna, you're out of, we'll throw you off the island.
That was the stereotype that I heard as a Protestant about Catholics, that they were all into all these rules and superficial and external things, which was obviously, whoever was filling my head with that was pretty much all wrong. But I think, your takeaway was a deeper one, and I think, in my own opinion, the better one, to focus on, not the rules and regs, but the relationship. And I just don't know how many people see that about Catholicism. I mean, what's your thought on that? Did they think about relationship?
I don't know. I don't think that's always. We come to something.
Yeah, and so I guess I was going to ask you is if you wanted people to focus more on that relationship, how would you go about doing it? How might you, speak to people who are wondering, how can I be a Catholic? How can I be a good Catholic? What would you say to them?
Well,
I mean, you sort of said don't focus on the trappings.
So, but I don't know if that's a different answer for everybody, or maybe I don't feel qualified to give advice, but
just curious then.
Yeah. I think it's never giving up, and I think that prayer time thing is the big thing. How you build a relationship with anybody. What do? You want to learn more about them, learn about their lives, talk to them on a regular basis. So, go to Mass, read the Bible, understand your Catholic faith, to learn about things that are challenging to you, and then just have regular conversations, bringing those things to God. And I also think, it's a lot of listening. I'm not so good at this one yet. I'm a very, active person and on to the next thing. But I want to try to listen better, be comfortable being quiet. I don't regularly go to adoration. That's something that makes me restless, but that's something I'm to challenge myself to do, and just learn how to go and be there, not have it, no, must fill the hour, how am I going to make this bearable or something? Just go and hang out, just be there. So trying to learn from other people.
Yeah, I have to say, but that's hard for me too, so I share your goal, is to be more comfortable and patient with that. Well, I really love how you say that, because if you have a relationship with anybody, what do? Right? All those things. And I guess to bring these two pieces together that we've been sort of talking about, the trappings versus the relationship, the trappings really, the to-do list really has a purpose. It's not just a checklist. All the things that people end up feeling guilty about. Have I gone to Mass? Have I, that they aren't about performance. It is about the relationship, right? Because going to mass, like me, anybody, is a place where you can do the relational things. You talk to God, listen and hear from God, learn who He is, etc., etc. So I guess I felt like I needed to sort of put those two things back together. That they do fit.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I know you're coming from a place of a relationship, and I 100% agree. And for those of the people that do get lost in the trappings, I guess I felt like I wanted to say, don't give up on that. Like you said, don't give up. Those are just structured to help you do the Does that make sense?
Yes, and I kind of like, your reference to like discipline. Something, it's, I remember a conversation I was in the other day, but I pointed this out to somebody. A lot of the activities my kids were involved in, or like a lot of kids, they're into sports or something, and it seems like the things that are made the most difficult are the ones that everybody wants to be part of, or even like in the military. People have a lot of pride being in the military, and my kids were in performance dance. I know kids that do, athletics of all different kinds of stuff, and the coach will be like, you must come to all the practices, and I've got a special practice, and you got to come in on this extra day, and now I'll do it, and they feel proud of doing it, and it's comparable, like we have these disciplines that we do, and they help us train for something. It's not an easy thing, but it's an important thing. You need to do those things so that you can be at that level.
Yeah. You can't get there without doing those things.
Yeah, they're mandatory.
Yeah.
They're formative, and they develop your strength. And
it's life training. Maybe that's what we're doing when we go to church. Training for life.
And I think it's also very important that it's a community. I don't think any of these things are just a one-on-one, it's just me and God. It's really about me and the whole Catholic family.
Yeah, well, so we help each other.
Right.
Things you say help me, and hopefully vice versa.
Yeah. And sometimes, you've got it all going on, and maybe I need a little, when I'm wavering or something, and I hear your story, and I'm like, okay, all right, well, all right, I'm going to do this too. So we help each other.
Well, thank you for helping all the people who are going to listen to who is Gwen, and how is her journey going. So thank you so much for sharing. Yeah,
thank you for inviting me. I had the open invitation for the longest time, and just felt like, who wants to hear what I have to say? And you gave me a personal invitation, and I just am in the habit of saying yes when somebody asks me personally, and I'm glad I did. Thanks for bearing
for having me. So you're so welcome, and you're right there, folks. Personal invitations work. And join us next time for another wonderful journey.
I would wanna travel